Welcome to the RaceGuru Thunder Hour. I'm your co-host, Rich Maletto with FantasyGuru.com. Joined, as always, also from FantasyGuru.com, is Sean Engel. You can find Sean on Twitter at SeanE247. You can find me on Twitter at FantasyBosco, all spelled out. And welcome to the Thunder Hour. Sean and I are back. Sean was kind enough to give me a week off, and I am really excited for today's show. We've got some special company we'll be bringing into the mix here shortly. But as always, I want to let you know where you can find all our content for betting, for DFS, for otherwise. You can find it on FantasyGuru.com. We still have our Game Time MVP promotion going on. $40, $39.99. Get you 12 months of everything, not including, oh, wait, did we add baseball? I know it doesn't include football, but I thought maybe baseball's. I'll have to get back to you on that. But hey, NBA, NHL for the rest of the year and starts the next year because it's 12 months. PGA, MMA, everything under the sun that's not football and maybe not baseball.
Yes.
But you get it all. So check it out. Hit us up at fantasyguru.com. Get in our Discord, and you can chat with Sean and I and talk NASCAR. Sean, how are you doing tonight, man?
I am doing good there, Rich. We're after the whole chaotic mess that was Texas. I am ready to move on to something that's chaotic, but also kind of fun with Talladega there, Rich. But before we go and get on into it, though, there is just one more thing to add with the Fantasy Guru Game Time promotions, and that's because we're still running this special deal. I mentioned it last week, but there's a special offer where if you get any MLB package at fantasyguru.com, you can get the Game Time MVP all-in pass for free. This offer still stands right now. You can go forth, get any of the MLB packages, and you'll get all those sports. I'm going to throw the image up here. All the sports you see on this image included for free with our coverage. Go out there. It's an amazing deal. Great stuff. Don't you agree, Rich?
Yeah. Look. If you're going to sign up and get Ray and Rob and Patio Joe's, and I think Scott's helping out, and Chris, you're getting all of that stuff for baseball, which is amazing content, and you get everything else included, dude, that's a jackpot. I am not saying this because I'm with Fantasy Guru. I understand I'm biased, but I stand by the fact that for the content, the amount of content, the quality of content you get, I'll put our pricing up against anybody out there. So check it out. You get to get a little taste of it here on the YouTube channel, but check out the website, check out the different packages. I can almost guarantee you we got one just for you.
Oh, for sure, for sure. I believe the cheapest MLB package is around like $45, $50. So, hey, that's a great deal right there.
For sure. For sure. Well, hey, this is about racing. So let's get into some racing. Enough about all the other stuff. Let's get into racing, Sean.
All right, let's get on into it. But Rich, for the first time, this is not just a two-man show. We got a three-person party up in here because we have a special guest with us. Joining us now is the founder of InBetweenMedia.com. They're a fantasy football and NASCAR analyst, a writer and editor for Betting Pros, and a four-time FSWA finalist. It is Seth Woolcock. Seth, welcome to the RaceGuru Thunder Hour.
Boys, it is so good to be here with you. I had to walk out of my house on Sunday evening holding the Ross Chastain outright top 5 and top 10 ticket. And all the DFS lineups had him in as well. And I had to walk out because I was so mad because I can never get William Byron right. He puts my guy in the fence. I'm a big Ross fan as well. Had to go take a lap around the neighborhood. And I didn't look at NASCAR. I didn't think about NASCAR. Usually, I'm in the teardown, watching that live, watching the NASCAR betting preview show and the NASCAR gambling podcast, their recap episodes. I'm ready to go. Not this week. I had to take a few days off. But as the week has progressed and Talladega has gotten closer and closer, the vibes have gotten stronger. My mindset is shifted. And I'm starting to feel like I'm taking advantage of some soft lines out there from the books and from the DFS world as well. So I'm excited to be here with you guys. Thanks for having me.
Always a pleasure. I was on your podcast a couple weeks ago, the back road there. So I was there as a guest, and now he gets to cross back over with me here on the Thunder Hour. So should be exciting times.
You brought in a big time guest. I'm excited. I saw, I didn't know until today who the guest was. So it was a fun surprise for me today. And I've been looking forward to this podcast tonight.
Oh yeah. Excited to be with you guys. And man, is there anything like better than Talladega? Like, while it's one of those races that we have to keep in mind with our betting and DFS bankroll to, keep it manageable. We don't need to be getting crazy because there is a lot of unknown with this race. Like, if there's one race I could just go to as a fan, it would be Talladega, 100%. Like I love what you do at night down there. Everyone's partying, everyone's having a good time, and like I'm seeing so much excitement right now on the internet for it. It's great.
Oh yeah, for sure. Talladega. I've never been to a race at Talladega. I've always wanted to go. It's been on my NASCAR bucket list for the longest time. So
yeah,
hopefully one day I can head right there and see what it's all about in person.
You want to hear something interesting? I've been to Talladega twice.
Oh.
The very first race ever I went to as a 7-year-old, I believe I was, in 1986, was Talladega. And then I went back when I had some friends that were working on the FDNY truck team and got some sweet access there and wanted to go back with my grandpa. That was during the tandem draft era. Interestingly enough, out of 2 races I've been to at Dega, I have never seen a pack race.
Wow.
Because in 86, we didn't have restrictor plates. And then when I went back in 2011, I believe it was, we were doing tandem. So I just find it interesting that I've been to Dega twice and I've never actually seen a pack race. Just kind of a weird tidbit.
Well, if you do go there next time, we know what kind of racing we should expect then.
Hey, I got to see what at the time was one of the closest finishes, right? The whole Clint Boyer, Jimmy Johnson thing. Yeah. So it was a good show without a doubt. I've been very fortunate with some of the experiences at the races over the years. So, but like you guys said, I got to give the hat tip to Seth for leading off. He didn't bury the headline. Soft lines. I mean, you pulled up the lines today and everybody, the top 10 is at plus 1,000. So talking about managing bankroll and stuff, like this is a fun week for betting purposes. Like you can get away with smaller bets and making more of them and collecting as much money. So I'm with Seth. I saw the lines today and I was like, whoo, it's going to be different come qualifying, but it's going to be a fun week to start with.
Oh, yeah. This is why we have Seth here, because we got ourselves a big week. We had to have a bigger guest on here, Rich.
True story. All right. So we've got the introductions out of the way. Let's just cover the Texas race this weekend here quickly. Kyle Busch, no shock, no surprise. I mean, the Vegas odds were plus 130. Seth, I'm curious to your take because I'm allergic to lines that are that low for NASCAR because I've been around the sport for too long and know cut tires, birds flying into cars, things of that thing change an outcome. Where would you be with the plus 130? Were you willing to go after Kyle Busch?
The answer was no. I was actually like I'm newer to betting on the truck series as of this season. I've always been someone who more tails other people. This is my first year kind of putting out my own cards for the truck series. So I was pretty hesitant to put a lot on this race. I had a Tyler Ankrum matchup. It went out of the way early. I also had a Ty Majeski top 5. It didn't hit either. So, but with those lines, Rich, as you allude to, it was really hard to get on Kyle Busch specifically this week. I was on him in Vegas. I was on him in Atlanta, but he hasn't been the same Kyle Busch both in the Cup Series and in the Truck Series. So I think I saw him at open, maybe like plus 175, and I flirted with it. But as the race got closer and closer and it got bet down, under plus 150, I couldn't really think about it. And I just kind of thought about all the value that's out there on the number 9 car, on the number 11 car, and all these guys who have kind of started to show up as the regulars and the dominant cars of the Truck Series.
No, I'm 100% with you. I think you summarized it perfectly. And I've talked about in the articles, this is not the same Kyle Busch truck experience that we've had for the previous years. And I mean, it's no longer his team, right? You still have the same support, but it hasn't been there. And, really, we almost look like geniuses, right? I mean, Corey Heim really pushed the envelope there at the end. And I was right with you on the top 5 picks, Seth. So don't be salty, man. I was salty with you on Saturday during, or Friday night after the event, but I really thought Majeski was going to give him a little something that day. So,
yeah.
Oh, well.
And there were some big Corey Heim tickets out there too. After qualifying, I saw him 11-1, and that was one that kind of made me stop in my tracks. And should Corey Heim ever be 11-1 in the trucks? That was kind of my theory behind it. And Sean, damn good run from Corey Heim, and like all the young guns, they pushed Kyle Busch, and it wasn't just him running away with it.
Oh, yeah, for sure. They were even mentioning it during the truck broadcast that Kyle didn't look superhuman like he normally was. He actually looked very much in a beatable position. And had there maybe been a couple more laps, we would have been talking about maybe Corey Heim beating Kyle Busch there.
Yeah.
He was right at his bumper at the end.
100%. Well, enough about the truck race. So I was flying when the Xfinity race went on. I was coming back from a golf weekend with Mike Dempsey, and all I got, because I could get internet, but I couldn't get FS1 on the plane TV. There were some other options. So all I got was a screenshot of the finish, and I had to go back and find the replay of the race and all that. So why don't you guys kind of break down what you saw? Because all I could speak to is the last lap and a half or so, which was absolutely insane. Hat tip Ryan Sieg. Break it down for us, guys.
All right, so the Xfinity Series race was definitely a sort of interesting race for sure. At first, it looked like it was just going to be an all-Geyer dominance fest because he ended up leading the most laps. He won each of the first two stages. He looked like he was not going to be challenged for a good amount of the race. And then the final stage happened. There's been some mix-up in strategies. There's been some mix-ups in wrecks. Ultimately, the cautions ended up dividing the field, and it was setting the stage there late for Ryan Sieg in order to run away with it all. And for a little while there, he was moving away from the pack. Sam Mayer was right behind him there, and he was making his way slowly but surely, and it took him all the way until the last lap, and then we got ourselves a photo finish there, and that was tied for, I believe, for like the third closest finish in the Xfinity Series history or something like that too.
Wait. There's been finishes that were closer than the 2 inches on the splitter. Like, I'm baffled. Like,
right.
What kind of photo equipment did they use back then? Because they didn't have high def. That blows my mind.
Yeah, actually, it's tied for the second closest finish in Xfinity history. There was a race, I believe, at Daytona or Talladega a few years ago when Tyler Reddick beat out Elliott Sadler, and that was even closer.
Wow. And it was one of those races too where Sam kind of came out of nowhere at the end. Like Ryan Sieg and Brandon Jones, like you kind of saw Brandon Jones starting to his lap times get close to all-Geyers as we were running green there. And then all of a sudden the caution flies, all-Geyer gets mixed up as he usually does in the pits. I think he started restarted 6th or 7th, made his way up back into the top 3, but man, that was a tough day for the back row boys. We were heavy on all-Geyer, man. We were heavy on all-Geyer. We were heavy on Cole Custer as well. Luckily, Custer cashed a nice top 5 ticket for us that day. But Custer and Riley Herbst actually looked like they both kind of had something for these boys out front. And then I don't know what happened to Riley Herbst, man. It feels like pianos are always dropping on this guy, and he just had to pit, I think maybe a loose wheel or something.
Yeah, it was a loose wheel with Riley there overall. But those Fords, they were showing speed in the Xfinity Series this past weekend, especially with Ryan Sieg there. During practice, he was showcasing speeds that are around like the top 5 fastest. And then you saw I talked with you a little bit before we got on the show today, but Ryan Sieg, he ended up being one of my long shot bets that I actually put a bet on. He was at first at 100-1 to outright win, and then eventually became 80-1. So you can imagine how I was feeling dealing with that heartbreaker there right at the line when that could have been an 80-1 win.
And Ryan Sieg, Kyle Sieg too, to a degree. Both of them have shown speed in some top performances, and it's a shame. I'm not trying to dog anyone because it takes a lot to run in any of these series. But imagine either one of the Sieg brothers being in some top-notch equipment, being in a JRM, a JGR, or something like that. Because these guys consistently are finding ways into the top 10s with teams that if I went to someone and said it's RSS Racing, they're going to look at me like I got a third eye. Like, who is that, right? So hat tip. I mean, I tell you what, I'm glad I wasn't watching because I would have been screaming at the TV that Sieg didn't pull it out because I would have been all over that. That would have been fun.
My girlfriend walks in the room. She was out shopping all day. She comes in with about 10 laps left. I said, "Oh, this is going to get good. You might want to watch this." And I said, "The guy leading has never won before. Keep that in mind." And she was screaming. She was surprised I wasn't standing up and screaming, more just because I had Allgaier and I was kind of peeved off and just sulking in it. But she was screaming, standing up at the TV. So I think it was a great race for even like the most casual of NASCAR fans, and some people who in the gambling and DFS community who were willing to put Ryan Sieg in their lineups, willing to trust him in the betting markets as well. Congratulations to Sean, who still cashed some really nice top 5 and top 3 tickets.
Yeah,
sure.
I still had him for top 5 and top 3. I was all over Sieg this past weekend just because I actually believed in the speed right there, especially because these Fords have just been looking good on these 1.5 miles at the Xfinity level, man. Just Mayer, I feel like I can never catch a break whenever I try to even consider Mayer for a win. I can never catch a break with that.
Yeah, he's definitely been jinxed a little bit, it feels like, earlier here in the year.
Well, all of JRM has. Like I was talking to my
Yeah.
buddy at work, and oddly enough, I've gone back and looked, and Allgaier's had the better finishes. But if you want to look at speed, Brandon Jones has actually been one of the better of the group of 4 there, which is kind of shocking because Sammy Smith looks so good early in his career, everywhere, anywhere with JGR, and we haven't heard much from him. It's just been kind of really interesting. And I have a little partial love for Sam Mayer because I was pushing him last year a few times, and everyone kept telling me, he's overrated, he's not this, he's that, and blah, blah, blah. I think the young man he's aggressive. He's driven over his head a little bit a few times.
Yeah.
They get him reined in a little bit. The kid has some speed. I shouldn't call him a kid. He's a young man. The young man has some speed. He's got the right equipment. JRM is just off a little bit. It was nice to hear that Allgaier was dominating again. He's done this a couple of times. Just hasn't quite had the finishes there, but otherwise he's had the finishes, to not match the speed. So very interesting. Well, let's before we get too far behind, let's talk about the Cup race a little bit. Chaotic, John. You wrote that up in our show sheet, and I think we expect chaos coming up here at Talladega. Like that is the expectation.
Oh, for sure.
We talked about Texas being kind of a snoozer in the past. Chaotic is not something I typically associate with Texas.
Oh, for sure. That it's just the way that this next gen car was handling all those bumps, especially towards like the middle to outside parts of the track on each corner. They were tripping up a lot of drivers. It was causing a lot of spins, causing a lot of crashes, causing drivers to just get out of the groove and fall back. It ended up causing several cautions too, and it ended up being very chaotic and mixing up the field. It's like at one point you had Kyle Larson as the favorite. At one point you had Tyler Reddick as the top favorite. And then at the very end there, you had Chase Elliott going up with Ross Chastain, William Byron, Brad Keselowski, Denny Hamlin. It was just a big old chaotic party there.
Yeah, I think we have to start really treating Texas until further notice as like kind of like a super speedway. I dialed back my units like almost in half last week, and I still came away not winning, like being very negative for the week. And it wasn't because I don't think that the bets were there, man. Like they were hitting throughout the race. They just aren't cashing in the Cup Series, and I think a big part of that, like that turn 2 bump, man, that turn 2 bump, every driver goes around it. And if you're pushing really hard on the outside, chances are you're going to get sucked up in that ice and you're going to go around, man. And we whether it was Denny Hamlin, Bubba Wallace, Chase Briscoe, whoever was trying to run that outside line and get high there, especially out front, just did not work out. And so I don't know. I'm going to be, I don't know if I'll bet on Texas if we keep it the same, honestly. Like I think I'll be very minimal, try to even get my exposure down more, especially in the Cup Series.
Maybe take some longer shot odds or something like
that.
A couple of smaller bets, hoping for, maybe some longer shot odds at a top 5. Because I'm with you. I was traveling vacation, so that was playing into it too. But I wrote it in our Discord. I'm not comfortable. All 3 races this weekend, I was very much twisted up. Because we've seen lately, especially, it's just gotten a little goofy there. But, 16 cautions is what we had in the Cup Series race last weekend. I'll have to go back and look, but outside of a Daytona, Atlanta, Talladega, something like that, I don't think we've had anywhere cautions like that. Maybe Bristol this past year with the tire wear thing, but beyond that, we've talked about how many races of, well, if it wasn't for the stage cautions, there was one caution, right? Or something to that effect. So 16, only 2 of them were for stage breaks. There was obviously some action and chaos. And I'm with you, Seth. Maybe from a fan perspective, it's a little more fun. Wish they had a betting window at Texas, right? With 15 laps to go let me make a bet, right?
Yeah, I don't think they can even get good concessions at Texas. I don't think they're getting a sports book anytime soon, Rich.
Nah, you're probably right. It is an SMI track, they try to lead the way usually, right? But hey, we don't have it at Vegas, and that's an SMI track too. It's something I've always wanted, envisioned. It's become more legalized. I keep thinking, man, this should be treated more like horse racing, right? Let me bet a trifecta. Come on, let's go.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh,
well,
sure.
We'll note, you already talked about Byron getting into Chastain. There's definitely been a lot of discussion about that. I think the 2 drivers that maybe put this behind him, from what I can tell. I don't know. I know Byron reached out. Chastain's run over his fair share of people at times, so I feel like, maybe he has a right to be mad, but, in check. They're going to be around each other a lot. These are 2 drivers that are going to be championship contenders, presumably for the next many years. So they better get it figured out. Although, hey, we could use a good rivalry. We're losing some of the villains are getting a little old here, which is kind of the antithesis of how it's worked in NASCAR. It's usually been the veterans start to, Dale Earnhardt got booed. Then Jeff Gordon was winning, and now everyone loved Dale Earnhardt and booed Jeff Gordon. Darrell Waltrip will tell you all it takes is one incident to go from cheers to boos in a heartbeat, and so I wouldn't mind having a villain, but I hope they get that worked out. You mentioned Brad Keselowski did protest. I didn't understand that. Was he protesting where he was relative to Byron when the caution flew? Is that what the discussion was?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. That pretty much was the case, because during the time of caution, his car was ahead of Byron's, but they initially scored Byron as second place.
Byron's always getting so lucky with that stuff, though. Like even if it was a half a second later in the 500, Alex Bowman's our Daytona 500 winner. So yeah, like Byron, I don't know. I don't want to put the tinfoil hat on, but yeah, definitely some BS going on there a little bit. Good for Brad for winning that challenge.
I wear a tinfoil hat, and I'm still convinced, as Sean, I'm still not convinced NASCAR got the call right at Daytona. I want to see the still picture as the light is still green, and the still picture the next moment it's yellow. Because I was watching that, and I said out loud to the TV, weird. The last time this happened, they said it didn't count as taking the white flag, and now all of a sudden it does. So I wear the tinfoil hat. I'll be the bad guy, but I still call BS on that. So I'm with you, Seth. Byron seems to find that golden horseshoe that Jimmy Johnson had all those years.
And even wouldn't you count Byron as being involved in the wreck a little bit too? And then maybe he goes to the rear with Frost. I'm just saying, maybe not, maybe because he drove through it. But yeah, obviously some bitter berries here this week.
At a short track, they would do that, Seth. If you were the guy that helped start the spin, you do go to the back with the guy that spun. You don't get to hold that position. NASCAR's never done it that way, but I think it's a valid point, quite frankly. So. We do have some penalties. Sean, if you want to go through the penalties, I couldn't believe, it's NASCAR. We're talking 8 suspensions across all the series? Is that what it added up to?
About 7+ at least. Most of these are just flat out crew members getting suspended, including Kyle Larson with 2 of his members, the Jackman and one of the tire carriers getting banned for 2 races just because of the loose wheel coming up there. We got ourselves a couple of 1-race suspensions for Talladega due to infractions related to protective clothing and equipment with an RFK tire carrier, a JGR tire carrier, and the Jackman for the number 33 team, which was Austin Hill's team there. We got some gloves, helmet straps, and helmets just not being up to code right there. So that's the penalties.
Did they add a new safety member that I'm not aware of?
Dude, they're watching these boys like a hawk. You better be keeping your head on a swivel if you're a pit crew member right now. Let me tell you that much.
We've never seen this before. Like, you're telling me just now they got weird with the gloves? Just now they weren't wearing straps or something? Like, this just seems odd to me. You know what I mean? Sorry to interrupt, Sean. I didn't realize. I thought they were all for loose wheels and lug nuts, dude. I hadn't caught up all the way yet.
Nah, it was just the Larson was for the loose wheel, and whereas the Xfinity penalties were for lug nuts, with the crew chiefs being fined there. But yeah, there was a whole group of penalties where basically the company that NASCAR works with, where they, approve all the safety equipment as well as the gloves, the helmets, all the protective gear. For these particular crew members, it was not up to code, and they caught this, and that's why they're suspending all these members.
Just seems odd all of a sudden. You know what I mean? NASCAR, it's all about cheating, always has been. That's why I'm like, did they add a new safety checker? Because it seems weird that all of a sudden we got like 6 infractions, But hey, happy news. At least I'm happy. Seth, I'd love to get your take on this because Sean and I have beat this dead horse and then beat it till it was dead some more. No more aero short track changes. We're going to try something else. Thank God.
Finally.
Yeah, I'm happy, man. And I think bottom line, they need to find out whoever had the wrong mixture at Bristol, find out what that guy did, put him in a room until he tells you, and you start making tires like that, because that was a great short track race. Again, not great for betting, but great for entertainment, great for the sport, great for the fan. And like, I didn't think Richmond was as bad as everyone else made it out to be. Maybe it's because I cashed pretty big that weekend, so I might be a little biased there. But, I mean, that was probably the worst Martinsville Cup race I've ever seen. So I'm excited that we're finally taking a step forward here and admitting our wrongs. And, hey, like, let's figure it out. Is it the track? Is it the tire? I think it's pretty much the tire. But, yeah, aero's not going to help anything, and we know they're not going to add any horsepower to these cars either. So, hey, they're going to have to do something with the tire. So Goodyear, let's figure it out. There are smarter people than us who get on it. Come on, smart people. Figure it out.
Do you know what's interesting? That was the same tire they used at the Bristol Fall race. So what's really interesting is we know why the tire wore, right? The track wasn't picking up rubber. So then the question comes back to, why was it not picking up rubber? I'm assuming temperature had to play into it, but like you said, I'm not an engineer, man. There are people smarter than me. I got to believe that they're fully aware of track temp, tire temp, and all that. But it was really weird to know that NASCAR even pulled back a set based on the wear in the fall race last year, only to turn around and give that set back because that's all they had. Mm-hmm. And we saw, and I'm with you. And, we hear the drivers between the horsepower, the shifting, the wider tire, the weight, and all that. Something mechanical is going to have to change. And I can appreciate wanting a one-size-fits-all kind of car from a cost standpoint. But, man, I'm old. I've been watching NASCAR since the mid to early 80s. We have always had separate rules at different tracks. We have always had different types of cars at different tracks. We have always had to do things because it's different style of race. What you do at Martinsville, you don't do anywhere else, right? You're not doing long drag strip straightaways and locking up those brakes. And it's a shame because I'm with you, Seth. Last year, I would have said Martinsville was the worst Martinsville race I'd ever seen. This one now takes the cake, in my opinion. And it breaks my heart because my 2 favorite tracks growing up has always been Bristol and Martinsville. And it was great to see a good show at Bristol. Like you said, from a DFS standpoint, it was tough. But it was hard to deny the show. 54 lead changes. Man, I'm so old. I remember when managing tires was like a story every week. Like that was a thing you had to do every single week. I miss that. So I'm with you guys. I really hope that's the case. Sean, why don't you take us through some of the paint schemes? I got to tell you guys, I had a hard time picking. Outside the one that we all seem to be in agreement on to some degree, I had a hard time narrowing this down.
But there's some really nice ones and like some surprising sponsors I was happy to see out there this week as well, Rich.
I totally agree. And I tell you what, while we got a minute, why don't you give us a little plug on Back Road? Tell everybody where they can check it out and tune into you on a regular basis.
Yeah, I appreciate it, man. My co-host Elliot Hicks and Rod Villagomez and I are live every Thursday evening, 8:30 p.m. Eastern time. We'll walk through our DFS tire tiers, and then we'll also go through our betting cards, set up the week, recap the last week as well. We're at IBT_media here on YouTube. That's the easiest way to support us. You can also find our website, inbetweenmedia.com. We have a lot of different content from fantasy football, NFL betting, NASCAR. We're also dabbling in the PGA world as well. Our golf guys are hot, Bo McBrayer and Connor Coughlin. So thankful for them. But appreciate the plug, Rich. Thank you.
You guys are great. I've met a few of you there at the expo. I've always kind of found some of the stuff you guys are doing a little more innovative, on edge, creative, especially with the media stuff. So hat tip to you guys. Really glad you could be here, and definitely want to make sure we let people know where they can find you. So
for sure. Anyway, now that the paint schemes are properly loaded in, let's actually get on into it there. And I'm just going to get right on into the one of my first choices here because no, actually, let's just go with the one that most of us are already picking here. And let's just get this out of the way. The Jordan branded card there for Tyler Reddick. This thing, oh my gosh, this is one of my favorite paint schemes of the year now, bar none.
They need to make this a shoe. Like, I can see this as a shoe. I want to wear this on my foot.
Yeah, it absolutely looks like it. There is like elements of a Jordan design sneaker into this. So I mean, are you surprised though? Like no. It feels like 2311 has the sickest paint schemes almost every week.
That's fair. That's fair. Cause I tell you what, even this week's, we don't have them listed here, but I'll just do a quick shout out. I was really impressed with the Bubba Wallace one. It's a little busy, but I really like kind of the different color mix. So I got to give you credit there, Seth. You're right. 2311 has really just kind of hit home runs every week on their paint schemes.
Yeah, I have to agree with that too. 2311, we've talked about a bunch of their different paint schemes on this show several times at this point too. They're just one of those teams that have just been nailing it almost each and every week pretty much. And Reddick here, another very fire paint scheme. I love how this looks. Even how they included the Beast iconic Beast logo there to fit the Monster branding is used very well with this image. So credit where credit is due is what I'm trying to say. There we go. So getting on into the next pick, I'm going to throw in one of my first picks because also Seth's background with his light colors reminds me of this paint scheme. So it's actually Daniel Suarez's new Tootsie scheme there too. Now this is the render that they released very recently that Suarez is going to be running this paint scheme there at Talladega. Got black, a lot of purple, pink lines there with the neon effects. This looks really, really cool. So what do you guys think?
It's tight. It's dope. What is Tootsie's though? Like, I know there's a lot of different. Okay, that's what I thought. So
it's a bar in Nashville.
That's what I thought.
Big deal in Nashville.
Yeah. Have you been there, Rich?
I walked by it.
Okay.
I was in Nashville. I walked up and down Broadway. It gets really, really packed. They have at least I'm thinking, pretty sure it's the same bar I'm thinking of. I'll look it up here in a minute. They have a rooftop bar. Like I've heard you have to be there at like 3:00 if you want to even get up there in there. Tootsie's Orchid Lounge on Lower Broadway. Yep, that's it.
Lit.
Yeah. My only thing is I wish they did this at a night race. Like, man, that paint scheme would look so at Charlotte where it goes from daylight to night and the lights come on. Woo, that would be sexy.
Also, this would be a key cup car for if NASCAR ever wanted to experiment with underglow at night races. I'm just saying. I've been saying that for a while.
Hey, when they did that deal in Vegas, I would say they did it in Vegas. And what exhibition race did they do that on, Sean?
They tried that at the All-Star race at 2020, the COVID year.
That's right.
Why didn't they keep doing that? Any idea?
Just because I'm guessing they did not like how it resulted with the way that they executed it, and the fan response wasn't as well liked as we thought it would be.
Wow,
I thought it was kind of sexy.
Grow up, people. Come on.
I thought it was cool, and I'm usually the old fart that hates everything. I mean, if I liked it, like, couldn't have been that bad.
I think it was just because also they did not have all the underglow lights be based on each car's paint scheme. They only had like 3 set colors, one for each manufacturer, and that was it.
Oh, yeah, because it would be cool. Like if this was purple, like Hamlin could have run the purple depending on his scheme, but it would have been nice to see like, the cheddar Kyle Busch car with a little orange glow instead of whatever color, Chevy was using, for example. I could see that.
Yeah, pretty much. How about we get into your next paint scheme choice there, Rich? What do you got for us now?
I tell you what, this is look, we know I like orange, so this was going to come up, right? But I happened to, what really caught my eye on this, you couldn't have put 2 better sponsors together on a car. Like, we all know Thomas's for their English muffins, but apparently they have bagels or some sort of English muffin bagel based on the picture, right? But what I loved is you got the little bagel with the cream cheese, and then in the bottom corner panel, you got the Philadelphia cream cheese. Like, it just, I don't know how to describe it. It's a little busy. I'm usually not into the images and whatnot, but I was like, you couldn't have done a better job of getting the orange from Thomas's, the blue from Philadelphia, and putting them on a car. Like, I was like, this is a sponsor's dream right here.
Oh, for sure. And overall, as it stands there, the orange and blue, I always love those colors together there, too, even speaking as a New York Mets fan. So there you go.
And who doesn't love Philadelphia cream cheese, man? I'm a sucker for cream cheese. I'm trying to cut down on it a little bit, trying to find some other substitute because it's a little fatty, if we're being honest. But goddamn, do I love that stuff. So
it's tasty, though, man.
Yeah. Shout out Philadelphia. We appreciate you.
Oh, yeah. Can't go wrong with some good cream cheese now, especially on a bagel. That's about as classic of a pairing as you can get right there.
Hell yeah. You probably know all about that, Sean, up in New York there, man.
Yeah, New York and their bagels. You know how it is here. All right. Speaking of food-based schemes, why don't we segue from one food-based paint scheme to technically 2 food-based food schemes with Shane Van Gisbergen's Wendy's schemes at both the Xfinity and Cup Series level, driving for Kaulig Racing there. So we got Wendy's. It's been a sponsor of various cars all throughout the years, especially at these super speedway events. I especially remember the last year when Noah Gragson was running Wendy's schemes. But these Wendy's schemes look pretty neat overall there too, especially the cup-based one. I love how they mix in the red, the black, the blue. It looks hot. Looks fire.
I like it. And I actually like SVG a little bit in both series this week. I think SVG could mess around and potentially find himself towards the front of the pack. And I agree. This was one of my favorite of the week as well. And I actually like the Xfinity one, though, a little bit more now that I see it, though. I think they do a really nice job with the Frosty in it. And I like the all blue. I think that's sweet. I really like these.
I would agree.
Yes.
I already and I'm with you on both fronts, Seth. I didn't have him here listed, but I did note him in my little notes over here to watch. And I'm with you. Both these paint schemes look really good.
Yes. Especially the Frosty scheme for the Xfinity series. It looks very clean, simple, but effective. And then the Kaulig car for the number 16 for Cup. It reminds me kind of almost like a Hendrick scheme with how they utilize the colors a little bit.
Yeah,
I agree.
All right.
So let's get to the sets. Pull up sets. I'm going to talk about sets here, man.
All righty. So Seth, he got into the festivities of paint schemes with us. He's got us Ross Chastain's Jockey Outdoors scheme featuring Luke Bryan.
Yeah, this is badass, man. I mean, I am a homer. I love Ross Chastain. I love Busch Light. I love Luke Bryan. So to see it all kind of come together here is just great. And I think Jockey does a nice job, man. They do a nice job. Like, again, a little busy, a lot of different logos going on, but I love the front of the car. I love the side of the car. And right now, Busch Light is in the midst of releasing their different fishing cans. So I think having the fishing can element on the car, really well done by whoever did this wrap.
100%. Do you guys notice there's even a little Wendy's on it too?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, Wendy's with the Trackhouse sponsorship. Yeah, I believe we talked about all the Trackhouse associated cars this week. So yeah, good job on Trackhouse on the paint schemes this week.
Between 2311 and Trackhouse, they have really done. And are we shocked? Let's be honest. They kind of have the youngest owners, right? Justin Marks and Denny Hamlin, So are we shocked that the paint schemes are fire? Because I don't know about you guys, but part of the fun for racing for me was the roar, the rumble, the smell, and the cool looking cars, right? So I'm all here for it.
Yes, as am I.
Well, let's get into this weekend's. Let's preview this race a little bit. This hour's already flying by. Wow. It's too much fun for us, I guess. But let's talk about Dega a little bit. I think we're all probably in agreement. We've already kind of hinted at it. It's a little different than most weeks. Maybe we should have treated Texas like we do Dega. I think Seth is onto something there. But I'm of the opinion I'll be betting less units, probably more drivers. When you can get 10-1 odds at the favorites, and we know that historically speaking, the winners, a good chunk of the winners have come from that 3,000 plus 2,700, 3,000, 3,300 to about 4,000. So now you're talking 33, 40-1. Hey, you can get away with placing 6-7 bets to win, a couple of bets for top 5, top 10s, and only have to put a couple of bucks on each bet. And you're going to win just as much if you'd put, say $10 on a favorite most weeks. We're going to see the pack. Unlike Daytona, though, it's a little wider. We hopefully will see maybe some 3-wide racing instead of just 2-wide racing. The cars won't have to handle as much as they do historically at Atlanta and Daytona. So raw speed is definitely what it's going to be about. We know we're going to have to hit on the drivers in the back. Tyler Ankrum really hurt us at Texas. I was with you guys. That seemed like the slam dunk. I mean, I think he was 77% owned, right? For Xfinity. I mean, that was a chalky play. Why would you not? He's been fast all year. Dude starts 31st, 34th. I don't know. I expected him to be top 10. There's 24 bonus points for us from a DFS standpoint.
Yep.
We're going to have to be fishing for those again this week, right, guys?
Oh, for sure. Definitely, just because the way that the place differential works here and how drivers can easily move through the field, not even just through making their way through the pack, but just because of crashes, wrecks. That in of itself can make drivers move all the way up too as well, especially some of those drivers that we've seen it before. Some of like the BJ McLeods out there that may not even have the fastest equipment. They'll still end up having a great day just by even surviving the race.
Yeah, and if there's any of those like name brand Cup Series guys that are going to be towards the end of the pack, like they just get to a bad qualifying, maybe they spin out in practice, can't qualify. Like last week, the chalk was kind of Kyle Busch. Like nobody wanted to play Kyle Busch at 9,000, let's be honest. But when he was starting well into the 30s, you're like, all right, well, yeah, I have to get something down with him. So, yeah, I think I'll definitely be looking for people who are just kind of qualifying out back. And even if they don't have like the strongest equipment, they're still going to get those differential points.
And, one thing we learned from Daytona, fuel mileage, right? What we're going to see is don't be alarmed when the guys you like are sitting back there in 20th for 3/4 of the race. And we go into pit stops and they're one of the first ones out. That's going to be tough from a betting DFS standpoint because we don't know how that's going to play out till it plays out. We know the top teams are going to be playing that game, but we don't know who's actually going to be able to take advantage of those situations until we get to race day. So just something else to kind of keep in mind. In my opinion, for those who just dabble or don't watch a lot of NASCAR or kind of want to have some fun, this is the prime weeks to do it. You don't have to be super creative with building your lineups. Historically speaking, really well-scoring lineups have had $1,000, $1,200, $1,500 left for salary. It's all about kind of chasing those place differential points and maybe hitting on a dominator or two if you're lucky, right? Mm-hmm. So there's not a whole lot to it. It's a good week to spread out the love, scale back units, and take some stabs with some different folks. Hopefully the big one doesn't bite you. That's the hard part. It's going to happen. It may happen twice. We don't know when. We don't know who's going to be involved. And unfortunately, as we've seen in years past, it very much can be involving the top 3 cars, the cars that have been up front all day, avoiding trouble with 5 laps to go. And next thing you know, someone in second or third place pushes the envelope, and now we just collect 20-some cars.
Yep.
That was the case with Brad Keselowski at Daytona right there.
Always. So no truck race this week. Xfinity, we've got a bunch of drivers stepping up. I tell you what, guys, Seth, so I know you haven't been big in the trucks before, but you've gotten into it more. I'm assuming you've done a little bit more Xfinity as well. I've been pumping Taylor Gray like it's going out of style. I've been pumping him up in the Truck Series for about the last year plus. I've been taking a liking to him over his brother. He's just a little younger, and he seems to have more of that edge to him. They keep giving these JGR rides in the Xfinity Series, man, and keep telling folks he's going to get his one of these days. We're going to see Truex back, and he does well here in a JGR car. Jeffrey Earnhardt for Sam Hunt. That's kind of an interesting placement this weekend. Never really seen much from Jeffrey Earnhardt, but hey, he's got the Earnhardt name, so people keep looking for him. David Starr. There's a blast from the past, right? So we got some fun names in the Xfinity Series this week. Cup, Cody Ware's back. I haven't looked into his legal difficulties and seen what's up, but he is back and he is in the car. We pointed out SVG, Shane Van Gisbergen. He's back, which you're going to see him on and off at Trackhouse this year. Watch out for him in Xfinity. I'm with Seth on that. Anthony Alfredo. Look, this young man keeps showing speed. He doesn't seem to get the finishes, but whether it's been Xfinity, whether it's been Cup, he has surprisingly been faster than the equipment historically. And Sean touched on BJ McLeod. Look, at Daytona, McLeod looked good, man. I hope that money they got from selling the charter, they could put into the equipment and shop and scale back the racing or amount of races. I would love to see that 78 car run top 5, top 10. That would really be fun.
They're probably my favorite team in the garage. I wrote a little bit about it in an article earlier this year, but had a chance to kind of meet that team and interact with them last year when we were up at Pocono, and they're a class act organization, man. Team Live Fast, and sad Matt Tifft isn't with the team anymore, but happy he's kind of venturing back into racing a little bit on his own. And yeah, they're just world class, man, and excited to have BJ back at the track this week.
Oh, for sure, for sure. I think it's especially with the speed that they ended up showing during their Daytona duel race, even though they didn't make the 500, it was something to definitely take a note of right there as well, just because the way that equipment is, they're not driving in every race anymore. They're piling their resources into a couple of select races, and I think that's going to just bump up the performance level of them a little bit. But before we continue on, there are some other points I do want to make about these notables list here. First of all, I want to point out about Jordan Anderson in the Xfinity Series. We cannot ignore about Jordan Anderson, especially when that team had 2 cars in the top 5 earlier at Daytona in the Xfinity Series this year, and Jordan himself was one of those drivers. And then as for Cup, with that Anthony Alfredo, he outperforms the equipment. Let's not forget, he's with Beard Motorsports this week in that 62 car, and we know this. Beard tends to be a good car if you want to go for DFS. Never usually qualifies high up, but ends up getting some good finishes most of the time at these tracks.
I love the Jordan Anderson shout out, man. Him and Parker Redsloff have to be just in your DFS lineups, potentially on your betting cards as well. Like Parker specifically, I put a tweet out earlier today, like just his recent finishes at super speedways, P5, P3, P7, P16, P7, P27, P7, P3. Like that's his super speedway finishes in the Xfinity Series. Great shout out there. It's good to have Jordan Anderson, kind of the car owner, back in that ride.
Oh, for sure, for sure. If you're playing Xfinity this week, you cannot ignore those Jordan Anderson cars. They've shown some surprising speed within the super speedway based events already this season.
Absolutely.
I concur. Well, if you want to get any and all of our content, mine, Sean's, not Seth's. Let's go to IBT_media. Check them out. They've got great content over there. They've got some great guys over there. Like I said, I've met some of your colleagues there, and we always have a blast. So be sure to check them out. But if you want to get the rest of Sean or my content or any of the other staff, Jeff, Armando, Russ, Tyler, the whole 9, go to fantasyguru.com. We do have that Game Time MVP promo going on. If you are into baseball, you get the Game Time MVP promo with any baseball package. So please check that out. If you like baseball, hey, look, Ray Flowers there's a reason they call him the Oracle, right? So shout out to Ray and all the stuff he's got his team doing over there for baseball for us. So come check it out, fantasyguru.com. Well, we've kind of hinted at DFS. We've talked a little bit more about betting. Quick question for you, Seth. As betting's become more legalized or more widespread acceptance, Have you found yourself betting more, playing less DFS or same DFS, just adding some betting? How has that kind of been going for you, specifically for NASCAR anyway?
That's a great question. I haven't really thought about it until now, but I will say as the markets have opened up, specifically on some of these more mainstream books in the last 3 or 4 years, I definitely have shifted a lot more into betting. I still play DFS, but not to the extent, I was probably throwing out 15, 20 lineups most races. I've definitely scaled that back quite a bit. And I'm still playing lineups each and every weekend, but a lot of my unit allocation does go to the betting side. So that's a great point. And I imagine I am curious if that's kind of across the board. A lot of people feel that way. And I wonder what DK and FanDuel's numbers would tell us as well.
Yeah,
I'd be curious to their numbers. I know for me, like Sean and I have had this conversation. We've had more fun on the betting side. And I think, at least for me, I'll speak for me on this. It really hurts when you have that DFS lineup and that one guy crashes and gets you -6. And it takes you, you look at the lineup and you're like 5 spots out of cashing, right? And that stupid one driver killed the lineup. And you may have 4 or 5 different lineups with a lot of overlap between them, but this one had a different guy that crashed, or, the chalk didn't play out as you had hoped. Whereas with betting, yeah, you lost that Ross Chastain ticket, but you still had the Byron ticket maybe, right? Or you still had the Heim ticket, right? And didn't get Sieg. And so I'm finding I'm having more fun. And I told Sean this earlier. I've had to change my thought process on DFS to focus on how do we get points. At least with the bets, I can focus on who I think is the top 5, who I think can contend, who I think is a top 10. That only goes so far in DFS because that's not the strategy in DFS. I was finding myself really nailing guys in my lineup that were, 5 of these guys would be in the top 7 spots, but I didn't have the major place differential that finished 12th or 15th, right? That started 30th. And so I found that I've had to change my thinking, and the way I've watched, the way I grew up with the random pools and everything else, I think I like chasing, so to speak, the placement of where they're at. So I definitely have found I've been spending more time researching and playing the bets than I have the DFS side. I'm like you said, I'm still putting out my handful of lineups literally every week, multiple contests. It's just, I'm finding it more fun, I think, from the betting side.
Yeah. And if you ever do want to scratch that more placement focused itch, Rich, I will say we do the IBT crew and a bunch of my friends from the industry, we do a league on fan tracks every single year, and it takes out the differential points, and you're really just looking for stage points. You're looking for the finishes. And that makes it a little bit easier for especially like some of the more casual fans. Cause I've heard some complaints from the more casual DFS player in NASCAR, like, I don't get the differential points. I'm nailing, people finishing inside the top 10, but I'm just still not winning. And it can be frustrating, especially from a content creating perspective as well, because we can give all the best advice in the world with each driver, but a lot of it comes down to qualifying. So there are other platforms out there like Fantrax, I'm sure, that, kind of give you that edge where you're not just looking for the differential, because it's a totally different ball game out there.
What's funny is I reached out. So I've been playing NASCAR fantasy since literally I was like 8-10 years old. There used to be a Mark Guerrero salary cap league.
Okay.
I was in some other salary cap leagues where as long as you had the person in your lineup, that salary stayed the same. Each week it changed, but if you left them in your lineup,
that's how ours is. Yeah. Yeah.
So then, if you're ahead of the curve, right, it pays out for you. Yahoo got rid of theirs. Like, I'm not a big fan of the one that's on NASCAR.com because of the garage option. I don't always get to watch live in action. And so same thing with football. I said it, and I don't want to have to start making it in the middle, making decisions in the middle of the event. So I kind of missed the Yahoo and some of those things. I used to do a drafted league. You got 4 drivers, you race 3. It was like 6 of us in a league.
Oh, cool.
Some fun. There are other fun ways to do it. And I hope that kind of gets back into it. But I reached out to DK years ago because they used to have a passing points thing. I don't know if you guys remember that.
Oh,
You used to get so many points per pass, green flag passes. So someone that watched avidly, you knew Matt Kenseth. Yeah, he always qualifies in the back, right?
Yeah.
But you knew he was going to pass a bunch of cars to come up. Martin Truex was always a great play because he had a habit of not qualifying particularly well and moving up. But it was passes on track. Well, what happened was because of the scoring data, it wasn't real time. They couldn't pay out fast enough. People complained, so they got rid of that option entirely. The following year, they came out with the place differential, and that was basically how they compensated the passing points. I used to love the passing points. I used to cash consistently in NASCAR when we had the passing points. I've always thought I was good at chasing the place differential, but I'll use Tyler Ankrum as a perfect way. First of all, it becomes super chalky. 77%. Well, there's no edge there. Everybody's using it. Great if he crashes out to some degree, but there's no real edge there. And then if he does crash out, well, shoot, you're only paying 20% of the lineup. So anyone that faded him is probably better off since there's only 23% of you out there. So I'm with you. I would love to get back in. I did run kind of a Fantrax league last year. It was kind of a pain in the butt the way I'd set it up, but I'm game to try some of these other things because I'm with you. I'd rather chase the stage points and the finishing order than I think some of the other fast laps is cool, but boy, that's hard to watch while there's no way for us to
Yeah.
So, well, let's get into some of our picks here. Let's start with you, Seth. What do you got for your top price drivers to watch this week?
Yeah, so if I'm paying up, man, and I will say I was really surprised to see DraftKings specifically list their high-end drivers so high up here. Like paying $10,000 for anyone really isn't my strategy at super speedways. I like to go the more balanced lineups here. But if I'm paying up, it's going to be Ryan Blaney, man. What Blaney's done at Talladega is really unparalleled at anyone we've seen in the Cup Series. Wasn't even really that fast in the fall. 20th in iFantasy Racing's total speed rankings. Still won that race, giving him his third of his career. Finishes of first, second, and 11 here in the next gen era. Finished second in Atlanta as well. Like he's knocking on the door, man. So I'm going to pay up for Ryan Blaney. I'll take a couple shots at Brad Keselowski at 10-2 as well. But that's everyone in that top tier that I'm really going for. I'm kind of limiting my exposure up there. If you want to play Hamlin, that's fine. I think Hamlin's a fine play this week as well, but I really like, that minus 9K tier a lot.
Yeah, I can totally understand that as it is, especially when you go forth and you see some of these top price drivers. I mean, it's hard to ignore some of them. Ryan Blaney, as you mentioned, he's also, spoiler alert, one of my top price options that I'm definitely on this week just because of the history right there. It makes sense. If you want to go up there and you want to get yourself a driver that's like top of the line, you want to get a driver that you can trust to actually go out there and maybe lead laps and win the race. And Ryan Blaney is certainly one of those drivers right there too, especially when you consider the fact of the matter is since 2021, out of all the drivers in the field this weekend, he has the best average finish of all drivers, 6.7. No other driver that's been in the field this week is even close to that. 6.7 average finish, 4 top 10 finishes in the last 6 Talladega races. The next best driver as far as average finish in the field this week is Chase Elliott at 11.5. And the only other driver that even scoring that better average finish in this span is a driver that's not even racing this week, Kaz Grala.
Yeah, I saw that today. The little outlier in that 16 car, I think in 2021. Yeah, I'm definitely with you, man. I think that top tier is a little bit chalked. Rich, did you have anything else that you liked in that top tier?
So, because of the pricing is so high, most of the top tier guys I looked at were the cheaper options, right? I'm with you guys on Brad Keselowski. Look, you even can consider the craptastic, if you will, runs he's had since he made the initial move to RFK. He's still been good at Talladega. He has been. It's amazing to me how horrible he's been at Daytona from a finish standpoint versus how really good he's been at Talladega. So I'm there on Brad Keselowski. Normally I'm not on Kyle Busch, but what I am buying into at these super speedway races is RCR cars. I always come back to RCR cars when we're at Daytona and Talladega. No matter the driver, no matter the year and how much they're down, for whatever reason, I don't know if this goes back to Dale Earnhardt info from back in the 90s. They consistently have decent running cars, whether it's been Austin Dillon, whether it's been Reddick, whoever. So because of the lower price, I kind of like Busch. And Bubba's going to get his one of these days. It's going to come. And, because of the whole background story at Dega, I feel like there's a story for him to win a full race at Dega that's coming at some point, right? To get the whole, chip or monkey off his back, so to speak. So I like that. I know Sean was kind of leaning on Chase Elliott too. Look, he does well at the super speedways. To your point though, Seth, look, the top price guys, they're probably the guys I'm putting in my lineup last, right? Like I'm going to go wait for qualifying and I'm going to load up with some of the tiers, we'll get into later and some of your points you've had, Seth, and fill out who we got here. Blaney's an excellent call. I don't, as a general rule, I tend to pivot a little bit from the obvious or where everybody's going because it's paid well for me to be, when everybody's on something, I like to kind of go the opposite way and it doesn't always work out, but I've had decent success doing that.
Zig when they zag, man.
Zig when they zag, right? So, but you can't look the numbers behind Blaney, the races this year. Quite frankly, he's been the top Penske driver outside of one event so far this year. So I'm on board with where you guys are at there. If I am, I'm probably going to your point, Seth. I'm probably finding the cheaper options in that high price tier.
Yes, I do. Before we move on, I do want to elaborate a little bit more on some extra points here. Your Kyle Busch call there, Rich. Let's not forget, he won this exact race 1 year ago there to add to your point.
He did.
That's something to keep in mind there. And we mentioned about Chase Elliott. He's been top 15 in the last 4 races at Daytona or Talladega, including 2 top 10 finishes. And he also did end up finishing in the top 15 at Atlanta earlier in the year as well. So that's something to also point out there too. He knows how to finish solidly at these sorts of tracks. But the other driver that I didn't that we haven't talked about or mentioned here at this point is William Byron, though. And he's somebody we have to watch out for within this particular track as well. He's also scored top 10 finishes in the last 2 Talladega races. He's been really strong at this track type in recent races. And we all know that 24 car, they can find their way to the front any given week. We can't ignore them.
They just figure it out. I don't care what track we go to. The 24 team, they just, between the crew chief and the driver, they're hitting on something. The 24 team is going to be something we're going to have to watch for the immediate future and then some, in my opinion.
For sure.
Well, let's hit on some mid-tier options here. I tell you what, I like who you got here, Seth. Why don't you lead us off again, man?
Yeah, I like Chase Briscoe. Chase Briscoe, dude, I mean, he's heating up right now. Like, no one is talking about Chase Briscoe. He's cashed back-to-back top 10 tickets for me. Specifically here at Talladega, finishes of 13th, 4th in this race last year, 10th, and then he had a bad 37th in the first time we were here in the next gen. But I like him. He was a top 10 car at Daytona. I think, and not a lot of people, for whatever reason, like Briscoe's never super chalky. So I think Briscoe is going to give you a little bit of leverage there as well. Down at 6'9", that's some nice salary cap relief. Austin Cindric, I think, could be potentially dangerous here as well. He had a good showing at Daytona. He was good at Atlanta as well. You don't know if you're always going to get the finish with Cindric. That's kind of what you have to keep in mind here. Like averaging 13 DraftKings points per week, it hasn't been great, but did get you about 53 points there at Atlanta. And then one guy just to shout out to, like Martin Truex Jr. is 8,200 this week. I think I know he's not, super speedway ace by any means, but he's averaging more DK points than anyone across the board. The only guy averaging 50 points per race, 41 at Daytona, 37 at Atlanta. So you can stomach that for 8,200. He feels safe to me. No ceiling, but safe to me. And that's kind of what I'm looking for in that 8,000 range. So those are kind of my mid-tier options this week, I'd say.
I think that's an excellent call on Truex. I've been saying the same thing. It's coming around. He has been looking better and better at the speedway tracks compared to where he was even 5-6 years ago. And you're right. Nobody is loving on Chase Briscoe. He has quietly just been getting it done just about everywhere. I mean, Sean's called him out a few times and hit on him quite well. But I think those are some excellent picks.
Oh, yeah. And in fact, actually, he's been kind of carrying Stewart-Haas Racing as far as performance this season. He's, after all, the only SHR car currently in the playoff picture as we speak. So something to
He's the
keep
most
in mind there, too. But I
he's the
also
most
will say,
veteran driver they have too.
yeah, for sure. But I think that Briscoe, though, he's more of a value pick in my eyes this week just because the price, especially on FanDuel, where he is really, really cheap at about 5,800. He is a total value there. And when you consider the fact that at Talladega, he's only had one finish outside the top 15 in his Cup career there, and the only time, as Seth mentioned there, was due to an accident. So he's really good at this track too.
Yeah,
Well,
he's
and
50 to 1 too. 50 to 1. Oh, that's a hang. That's a hang right there.
And your point on Cindric, he has been really good for the most part at the plate race tracks, the pack racing.
Only
You're right.
place.
The finish. So I mean, I got it pulled up right here. He's got a first at Daytona, 21st at Dega, third at Daytona, 9th at Dega, 23rd at Daytona, 26th at Dega, 37th at Daytona, 5th at Dega, 22nd Daytona. But he qualified every single one of them inside the top 18. I know, let's see, he led laps in 1, 2, 4 of those events. His teammates have been well there. I think Cindric is definitely, like you said, a little more risk maybe, but at his price point, especially if he qualifies closer to that 18th or 20th spot back, he's going to be a top 5 contender at some point throughout the race. I really like those calls.
Agreed on that.
My mid-tier group, it's more I'm betting the cars for the price point. How I do my DFS lineups, I'm not sure how many of these guys, if any, will make it, but Alex Bowman, I think he's a value. He just runs decent at these tracks, tends to stay out of trouble. I'm not expecting the world out of him, but I think it's all right. Ty Gibbs has a knack at these. We've seen in the Xfinity Series as he came up. He's got the right equipment. You know, Toyo's off a little bit, but he's kind of been some of the best speed we've seen out of Joe Gibbs Racing so far this year at times. And I go back to RCR, man. I cannot get away from RCR cars at these big tracks. I just can't do it. Over the years, they had put me in great places. So when everyone else is fading Austin Dillon, I'll roll that dice. Especially, I think he was cheap, if I remember correctly. 71, 7,200, something.
Finally cashed the top 10 ticket for a lot of people last week. I know I heard so many people the weeks before when we were short track racing, hey, maybe Austin Dillon. And he loves Texas, man. He loves Texas. He got it done last week. So maybe 2 weeks in a row for you, Rich.
Hey, new crew chief. The only time he's ever been decent is with the crew chief he's got now. So, you know, not shocked to see a little bit improvement at Texas. Like I said, even, you know, they were, to your point though, RCR did struggle at Daytona to start with, which was very odd. So maybe I shouldn't get too excited about that.
Yeah, well, but we know RCR historically, they've been great at this track. Even if Austin Dillon, he may have ended up being a victim of bad luck in a lot of recent races at this sort of track. He's shown speed at times. So that's something we have to keep our eye on, especially if he qualifies deep enough in the pack. That is for sure there too.
Well, why don't you go over because I don't think you gave your picks here, Sean, did you?
Yeah, only one of the 3 drivers I had on here was mentioned, and that was Austin Cindric. But I also have Chris Buescher and Daniel Suarez to mention there as well. We know Chris Buescher. We talked a little bit about RFK Racing. They're a team that typically brings really, really fast cars when it comes to this sort of track type. So we cannot ignore that, especially when Buescher, he's been a winner at this track type before. And then when you look back towards his recent races at Talladega within the next gen car, his best finish within a Daytona or a Talladega was at this race 1 year ago when he ended up finishing 3rd, and he scored positive place differential in his other Dega start later on in the year. So that's something that I definitely have him on my radar just because the equipment and the history is right there. And then when you look at Daniel Suarez, I feel like this has shades of when we were talking about him at Atlanta earlier in the year, just because we know that he's quietly been putting together the finishes at these super speedway events, and he did. Let's not forget, he won at Atlanta early in the year too. It uses the same rules package this week as Atlanta, but I also want to roll off a bunch of his recent finishes since last year. February's Daytona 500 finished 7th. The first race at Talladega finished 9th. The second race at Daytona finished 20th, but scored positive place differential. The second race at Dega, he ended up finishing inside the top 10. So right there, he's been good at these sorts of tracks since last year, and I feel like nobody is talking about him. And at the price point, $7,200 on both sites, I gotta say, I like my chances with Suarez. I think we might have to hammer him again this week.
Not a bad call.
We pushed it hard for that Atlanta race, man. You know, we really did. I remember getting mad because I said the line was just wrong. So we'll take it.
I was high on Suarez. I had him on the top 10 in a group there, but I didn't get down on the outright, and I've been kicking myself since. So maybe this will be the week I go back to the well. Maybe you talk me into it, Sean.
There's two drivers I've gotten really mad at Vegas for getting the lines wrong because it makes me mad because I feel like I could write them better than they do. It was Suarez at the 45-1 at Atlanta and Raja Caruth at 80-1 at
Vegas.
At Vegas. And I was ranting and raving on here, like, just put a couple of bucks on it, guys. Like, the odds just don't make sense. Maybe not likely, but at those kind of lines based on the finishes, it just doesn't make sense. So, yeah, you know what, Sean? He's been very sneaky good at these plate races.
Yeah, even down towards this week, he's got some nice favorable odds. Once again, if you wanted to hit on them already, he's 35-1 as of right now.
It's already started last time, and it got worse. So
yeah.
All right. Should we move on to the value bargains, or did I miss one? You got one more, Sean?
I think we hit on all of them, so we should be able to move on.
All right. We've got Seth and I got a bit of overlap here on our sleepers. Seth, I'm with you on Todd Gilliland. Give me your thoughts on that.
Yeah, man, Todd Gilliland, dude, like led 16 laps at Daytona, looked good there. Started 4th at Atlanta, was really kind of the breakout car there, leading 58 laps. Still hasn't had a top 10 this year. I think positive progression is going to be a thing this week. I think it gets turned around there, especially at a track he loves, man. Finishes include 12th, 10th, 7th, and 27th here at Talladega. I bet him last year for the top 10 here. I bet him last year when we had top 20s here as well. I usually bet Todd Gilliland when it comes to top 20s if we can get him at super speedways. So, yeah, I think right now, at least on DraftKings, I'm seeing a price of $6,100. It's hard to pass that up. I know he hasn't got the finishes you wanted, but maybe he can this week.
Well, that team has been good at these tracks, right? Michael McDowell's won at these tracks. The speed has been there. I mean, I think what's more impressive is both McDowell and Gilliland have shown speed at some of the other tracks. So I'm 100% with you. In fact, I see we'll get to it here when we get to bets, but I love your top 10 bet for Gilliland, Seth. That is an excellent call. So love that.
Mm-hmm.
Look, Sean and I are overlapping on Corey LaJoy. We have a guy in our Discord that bets Corey LaJoy every week, no matter the track, no matter the place. Shout out JP. And Corey LaJoy's been fabulous at these pack races. So we got some overlap there. And then actually Sean and I overlap on John Hunter. Look, his dad was good at these tracks. He's been good at these tracks coming up through the years. He looked good at Daytona. He looked decent at Atlanta. So at his price point, I definitely think they're off on his price point personally. But hey, Legacy Motorsport Club or Legacy
Motor Club
hasn't really shown us what we had hoped, right? We don't have him here, but Hocevar, if you go look at what he's actually done at this track, it's pretty solid. Like, I think I saw he was one of the best for percent of laps that were fastest, but it's a little misleading because he has so few laps. But even among competitive company, he's right there. I think the Legacy Motor Club cars are something of a nice value play all the way around. So they're all kind of on the radar. And then, Sean, you kind of touched on it. You've got Briscoe as more a value play. Sometimes where these tiers split, like we do that thing on Fantasy Crunchers, it's so funny. Kyle Busch will be priced so highly that he's in his own tier. Like I get Kyle Busch is $4,000 more than the next guy, but I'm not putting one driver in one tier and saying the rest of them are mid tier. So, where Briscoe falls, yeah, I think he's somewhere in that, depending on how you build your lineups, which you consider value mid. Either way, I think he's a great call. I mean, whether you're going with Seth's angle or Sean's angle, I think they're both a great call. So, but let's get into some of the bets here. We don't have a ton of overlap. And look, everyone, this is not shocking. Take your chances on some of these bets. I can't wait for Seth to talk about some of these bets because I didn't even look at the top 10s yet. I usually wait on that. And shame on me because these are some wonderful lines. So, Seth, why don't you go through your picks here?
Yeah, so I got a couple top 10s out there. The one I focused on, kind of chatted about Todd Gilliland here just a minute ago. The guy has some positive regression coming. He's been running good, specifically at the super speedways this season. I'm expecting him to be fast. Plus 240 right now on Bet Rivers. That feels like a bit of a misprice to me. It feels a bit soft. I'm attacking that. I also took a little bit of a sprinkle on Chase Briscoe in various routes this week. 50-1 on the outright. Top 10 plus 240. He's also matched up against Ricky Spinhouse for some reason at even money at Caesars as well. So makes no freaking sense to me. What's going on there? Apparently I'm really high on Ford this week, boys. Like that's what
you should be.
Yeah.
You should. Let's be honest, man. If we go back and look at Atlanta and Daytona, because as we were filling this out, I'm glad you brought that up. I made a mental note of, boy, I'm all over Ford. And I'm like, well, I should be. The last 2 years in this car, Ford has been the car.
Yeah. Yeah. And they're right. I have Ford on my betting card right now, plus 180 at FanDuel, about a 1/6 of a unit there for me. I talked about Briscoe. I like him. I like Gilliland. I already kind of spoke about Ryan Blaney. The one thing I would say that is kind of fun to do if you guys are in a state where Bet Rivers is available, they have a top 5 insurance promo that they put out weekly. And pretty much you can bet an outright. And if your outright still finishes in the top 5, you get your money back. With Ryan Blaney, that feels like a great bet this week because if he doesn't finish, if he doesn't win, he could still finish in that top 5. So I like that. I will say, though, if you guys don't mention me, throw out kind of a wild card here for the Xfinity Series, my favorite bet of the week. And I think it's going to hurt Rich's soul to the core, but I got to take my shot here. Parker Kligerman, minus 115 over Taylor Gray on Caesars. I'm down a whole unit, man. Look, Rich, I know you love this kid. This is first super speedway race in an Xfinity car. Last time we saw him on a super speedway race in general, he's flipping in the truck series. Maybe he has a little nerves here this week, especially after last week looking real sketchy. I know you guys might not got to see that at Texas, but he looked real sketchy, almost spun out really early in the Xfinity Series. And Parker Kligerman is just an absolute monster here, man. Like you should be on Parker Kligerman for a top 5 for an outright, I think, this week as well. Finishes the past 2 years at Talladega 6th and 3rd. And every super speedway we go to, whether it's the reconfigured Atlanta or whether it's Daytona, man, Parker Kligerman is up there. So if you just look at all the advanced metrics, man, Parker jumps out to me this week. I love him. I love the other Parker Reslov as well. I'm taking some shots in the Xfinity Series.
I can dig it. I do like Taylor a little bit at the super speedway. He did flip in the truck series, but he was running top 5 at the end of the race when that happened. So
yeah.
But there is Seth, I will not push back on that at all. Parker Kligerman has, whether it's been in trucks, whether it's been in Xfinity, he has, and I don't even care the level of equipment. He has consistently been a top 10 plus finisher at these pack races. So no, I think that's a great call out. I appreciate you mentioning one of your kind of hidden gems, if you will, for us, because we don't do a lot of the Xfinity bets, and that was a good call out. So appreciate that. Well, Sean, who do you got this week, bud?
So as far as my betting core 4 to win, I got Ryan Blaney plus 1,000. You can get him at 11-1 on some books there. William Byron is the same odds too. I just think Byron is a sneaky good play, especially at this track type. He's been
If he
really
wins
great
again,
here.
Sean, I'm gonna be so mad. I'm gonna be so mad, dude.
I got Chase Briscoe after that. He's plus 4,500 on DK, but on some books you can get him 50-1. And then another long shot I love is Corey LaJoie at plus 5,000. JP, I think this is the week that we have to all be like JP and put a bet on him there too. So there you go, right? That. But I do also want to give an honorable mention and a call out to Justin Haley, though. He's plus 8,000, 80-1 odds on DraftKings. And this has just been the track type where Haley's been sneakily good, no matter what kind of car he is driving. And he's driving for Rick Ware Racing. Something we forget about these Rick Ware cars sometimes is that they have that technical alliance with RFK Racing. I think that could come into play this week just because we know how good those RFK cars are at this sort of track. And with odds that deep, I think I'd be willing to take a shot at Haley just because of the history being right there as well. And even something like a top 10. You mentioned about Todd Gilliland there, Seth, about being plus 250 for a top 10 finish. Haley is a little bit deeper than that. He's plus 275 on DraftKings, and some books even have him at around plus 300 for a top 10.
Love it.
I love it. I was so close to using Haley. I really was in my list. So to see you there, now I'm kind of mad I didn't, because when you and I overlap, Sean, it's usually fire. So I'm really digging that. Look, I can't get away from Brad K. I will probably bet Keselowski until he wins, because I'm that confident a win is coming, and he is good enough to win. The equipment is there. He's good enough to win anywhere. The equipment has not been there. He's fully admitted they're even lacking from speed from last year. I'm assuming the new nose has got him twisted up a little bit, probably a balance thing if I had to guess. But it's not going to matter here. So I can't get away. Brad's record at Talladega is just so insane. So give me some Brad Keselowski at 10-1 plus 1,000. Look, Joey Logano needs to get it turned around. He's another one that at these super speedways is incredible with the blocking. It drives me bonkers the way he drives these tracks. But I tell you what, at 11-1, again, it's a teammate to Blaney. I've got no problem with the Blaney bets. I'm zigging and zagging type of thing. Michael McDowell, look, he does well at these tracks. You're probably better off finding a top 10 bet for McDowell, maybe top 5, than an outright win. I'd probably rather go with something longer. I'd rather have Briscoe, for example, at the plus 5,000 or 50-1. But I do like Michael McDowell this week. And look, JP, I got to do it, buddy. When we go super speedway racing, I'll throw the Corey LaJoies out there, man. I really will. So Corey LaJoie, we'll see. Maybe a top 5 bet is a better way to go.
I'm sure even though he loves that we're all going to be on the Corey LaJoie hype train, he's going to be hating me for the fact that I'm even on it, because he's like, every time I'm on a bet, Corey LaJoie bet with him, he's not going to win. So sorry about that, JP.
I was riding 12-1 last week, Corey LaJoie top 10, and at the end, amid all that chaos, Corey LaJoie was 12th coming into one of those final restarts. I said, "Oh, strap in, we might have a live one here," and didn't end up hitting it. But Corey LaJoie is always a fun sweat, no matter what.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So we'll finish up the show here quickly. We got our DFS picks, so we'll give you our core 4, if you will. This is kind of the base of who we'll build around. So no shocker, we've got a lot of overlap here with Ryan Blaney. So Seth, lead us off here. You got Blaney as your top guy. Yeah,
Blaney. We've touched on him all night, man, and I'll continue to touch on him all week in my columns, in my articles, and on the show. Love Ryan Blaney this week. Daniel Hemrick is another one of my core 4s. Hey, he was optimal last week. I had him in all my lineups. I was so happy that Daniel Hemrick came through. I've been recommending him for a couple weeks. Like, Daniel Hemrick continues to just be undervalued, I think, in the DFS realm. Like, he's finally not the lowest priced car. Like, he's been the lowest price or close to it every single week. Daniel Hemrick at Daytona scored you 49 points. At Atlanta scored you 35 points. Scored you 41 last week. Like, Daniel Hemrick is low key good at, like, he's so far back, he's gonna move up just because people are gonna get taken out of the race. We know he's gonna qualify terribly, like probably in the mid 30s. So I like Daniel Hemrick. I'll continue to beat that drum as long as I can this season. I also like SVG a little bit too. I think if you're looking for some bargain shoppers, Sean kind of alluded to it earlier, but Kaz Gralla once took this 16 car to a top 10 here at Talladega. We saw AJ Allmendinger take this top 10, this 16 car to a top 10 earlier this year in Daytona as well. I think SVG, he's learning the ropes. He got a top 3 at Atlanta in the Xfinity Series earlier this year. I like SVG a little bit. I don't think people would be gunning to play him, especially with him kind of letting people down in the DFS markets earlier at a road course in the Cup Series this year. So I like SVG, and then I mentioned Martin Truex Jr. earlier as well. Like Martin Truex Jr., just too many points on the board for 8,200.
And I think that's an incredible contrarian play because no matter where he qualifies, unless it's damn near the tail end of the field, I don't think you're going to see a lot of ownership on MTJ. And I think that's an excellent angle to go with. I really do love that call.
Agreed with that. I have also liked the Hemrick call a lot too. He's actually finished with a positive place differential in 6 of the 9 races so far this year. So
here's the deal. If you've watched the guy from Trucks and Xfinity and Cup, there's one thing common about everything. And when Hemrick runs, he just gets you finishes. Like, I know that sounds boring, but he's going to get you top 10, top 5 finishes if the equipment's there. If the equipment's not there, he's going to get you a top 20, a top 15 finish. It's just like clockwork with him. You don't see him getting himself in trouble. You don't see him overdriving the car. You don't see him pushing the envelope to extreme measures. He's going to bring the car home. And look, this team has had speed at these tracks. So I'm 100% with you. I think he is and I'm with you, Seth. He has been way underpriced all year. You know, it's come down to where he qualifies. Sometimes he qualifies a little too well, where it's a little risky, you know, when he's qualified 22nd to go ahead and cash in. But to your point, at 5,100, like he's been 5,300, 20 points, 15 points, he pays for himself. So
yeah, and I'll shout out Sean because he was actually the one who kind of put me on Hemrick maybe a month ago or so when you came on my program.
Sweet.
You said we got to rank him, and ever since then I've been riding him, and he's done good for me, Sean. So shout out to you, bro.
Woo!
Sean, getting it done like always. Always, Sean. Come on, man. What do you mean? Always getting it done, bud. Always. Well, speaking of Sean, let's go over yours. Is that Daniel Suarez I see leading off your group?
Well, actually, it's just because I'm splitting my core 4s depending on if I'm playing on DraftKings or FanDuel. But there's 2 drivers I'm playing on both, and Daniel Suarez is indeed one of them because I absolutely love the price where he is. 7,200 on both DraftKings and FanDuel, especially on FanDuel. That is a great salary for him right there in order to roster him into your lineups there. I mentioned it before. He's been sneaky good at these tracks. Corey LaJoie is the other driver that I have on my core 4 for both sites there. He's 6,600 on DraftKings, 4,800 on FanDuel. He is especially a great FanDuel bargain right there as it is. Now, when we go into DraftKings versus FanDuel, for DK, I have William Byron and Austin Cindric in my core 4 just because I know Byron and Blaney are my 2 top favorites of this weekend, but I think Byron's price is a little bit more friendly than Blaney's, as Blaney is the most expensive driver there. Byron is just $200 cheaper at 10,800 there. And then we have Austin Cindric at 7,400. We mentioned Cindric before just because of the fact that this is Team Penske equipment. Penske always does extremely well at these sorts of tracks. Cindric has always put himself in the hunt, leading laps in a lot of the recent races at Daytona or Talladega. He also led a lot of laps at Atlanta earlier in the year too. So that's what I like Cindric right there for. And getting into FanDuel, that's where I have Blaney because Blaney is actually cheaper than Byron. Blaney's the 3rd most expensive driver at 13,000 in this week there. And then I have Chase Briscoe at 5,800. I mean, that is really, really stupid cheap.
I'm going to have to get my FanDuel account unlocked just to go play Chase Briscoe.
Yeah, especially for a driver that, as I mentioned, outside of an accident in one race, he's always finished in the top 15 in his Cup career at this track.
Absolutely. Well, my list is pretty boring compared to what we've already talked about. I can't get off of Brad Keselowski. I like him at 10-2. He's a little cheaper than some of the other favorites, and I'm just feeling it. It's coming with Brad. I can feel it. Todd Gilliland, 6,100. It's cheap. He's cheap. He's cheap. He's cheap. Seth covered him really well. Again, at 6,100, I honestly don't care where Gilliland qualifies, to be honest, because I think if he qualifies near the front, he'll be a contrarian play that people won't be on. If he qualifies in the back, he's going to be chalky. Michael McDowell, their teammates. You guys know me. I'm always seem to be chasing a team or two each week that I really am kind of leaning on. So I got Michael McDowell again at 6,700. Austin Dillon at 7,300. Again, my core is really based on cheap values. You go with these four, you have so much money left over. You can pick whatever two drivers you want. And even upgrade one of these if you wanted to go somewhere else to say a Chase Briscoe instead of Dillon, save some money, have more money, that sort of thing. But that's my group of four. Obviously, we'll update and change things for Discord once we get qualified. As we covered in depth here, we're going to have to get the place differentials. That's going to have to be a thing we chase for DFS, at least on DraftKings. So that's the plan. But other than that, that's all I got, man.
Yes.
Yeah. Awesome.
Well, I tell you what, Seth, why don't you tell everybody where they can find your stuff again?
Yeah, absolutely, guys. Thanks so much for having me on the program. Great to meet you, Rich. And I'm bummed / happy to learn you've been at the Fantasy Football Expo the last couple of years, because I've been there too, and I haven't got the chance to meet you. So hopefully we can make that amends this year. But great to see you again as well, Sean. Send my best regards to your dad as well. Big Scott Engel fan. And I just easiest way to support me, man. Head over to YouTube if you're already on here watching this program. We're at IBT_media. You can also find the website inbetweenmedia.com. I share pretty much everything I'm doing between IBT and my work over at Betting Pros on my Twitter at between_SethFF. Thank you, guys.
Really appreciate it. Thank you so much for coming on, Seth. It's been a real pleasure, man. Like I said, you've got a great group over there. I've always had fun hanging out and talking to the guys over there, guys and girls, I should say. So, hey, feel free to check them out. We're not biased here, man. We support the content that's good, right? So,
Thank you, man. Thank you.
If it were up to me, I wish we could support all of them everywhere, right? Like, I mean, I was the guy 10 years ago that had subscriptions to 5 different platforms and websites, or 10 of them, or whatever it was. Mm-hmm. So, hey, I'll support you and back you up when I trust and like your content. You guys do a great job over there. So
thank you. Appreciate it.
Agreed.
You can always find our stuff at fantasyguru.com. Please check us out. We got numerous packages for you to check out. Game Time MVP. We got baseball with Ray Flowers. We got football on the horizon. NFL draft 8 days away. Maybe 7 days by the time you see this, but we're coming up on NFL draft time. It's time to rock and roll, folks. So we got that going on. Sean and I will continue to be putting out our articles this week. Be sure to check us out in Discord. As always, you can find Sean on Twitter at SeanE247. Sean Engel, you can see it right there on the screen. You can find me at Fantasy Bosco.
There we go.
That's right. Right there. Somewhere. Fantasy right Bosco. And hey, it's been fun. Let's go. Let the chaos begin. It's Talladega, baby. Let's go.
All right, let's go.
Let's do it.
As always, brought to you by the RaceGuru Thunder Hour, brought to you by fantasyguru.com and the Elite Plus Network. Please check us out. Peace.